The wind howled across the high valley like a wounded animal, dragging snow across the empty land in angry waves. The blizzard had arrived faster than expected, and Clara Mitchell was already far from safety. Her fingers, stiff with cold, clutched the reins of the wagon as her 2 children, Samuel and Ruth, huddled under the canvas behind her. The road was little more than a memory, now a winding trail through the Colorado wilderness, long buried under the swelling snowdrifts. Clara's husband had died the previous spring, swept away in the flood that took half their homestead. She'd sold what little they had left, packed her children into the wagon, and headed west. Her goal was a tiny settlement tucked into the mountain past 3 days' ride. If the weather held, but the weather hadn't held now. In the thick of the storm, the horses were panicked, snorting steam and refusing to pull forward. Clara's vision blurred as the icy wind needled her face. She had pushed too far, gone too long without food or fire, and her body was giving out. "I just need a moment," she muttered to herself, stepping down from the wagon to check the harness. The moment never ended. Her knees buckled. The cold swallowed her whole. Samuel, just 9, peeked out from under the canvas. "Mama." There was no answer. He climbed out, boots crunching in the snow, and found her lying still beside the wagon wheel, her face pale as the snow itself. Ruth, 6, began to cry from inside. Samuel shook her. "Mama, wake up." Nothing. Then dash through the wall of widow shadow moved. A tall figure emerged from the tree line, wrapped in furs and leather, with a thick beard crusted with snow. He carried a long walking staff and a rifle slung over one shoulder. A mountain man, clearly, and a big one. Samuel froze. The man didn't speak at first. He crouched beside Clara and pressed 2 fingers to her neck. Then he looked up, straight into Samuel's eyes. "She's alive." "Barely." Samuel nodded, too shocked to speak. "You kids get back under that cover," the man ordered, his voice rough like gravel but calm. "Now." The boy obeyed. With practiced hands, the man lifted Clara into his arms and tied the horses to his sled nearby. He wrapped the children in extra blankets, covered the family in animal hides, and guided them through the storm toward the mountains, toward life. They would never forget the moment the stranger appeared. They didn't yet know that the mountain man's name was Elias Thorne and that his arrival would change everything. The blizzard showed no mercy as Elias Thorne carried Clara through the biting cold. His breath came out in heavy clouds, mingling with the swirling snowflakes that blinded and bit at his face. Every step was a fight against the wind, against the slippery ground, and against time itself. Clara's body was limp in his arms, her breath shallow and uneven, but Elias refused to give up. His rough hands, calloused from years surviving the mountain wilderness, gently cradled her head as he moved. Behind him, the children huddled under a thick fur blanket, their wide eyes watching their rescuer with a mixture of fear and awe. "Almost there," Elias muttered, pulling the sled up a steep incline. Ahead lay his cabin, a small, sturdy structure built into the mountain's edge, smoke curling from its stone chimney. As they reached the cabin, Elias quickly lit the door with a flare of flint, ushering the children inside first. Ruth clung to Samuel's hand, her tiny body trembling with cold and fear. Inside, the warmth hit them like a wave. A fire roared in the hearth, casting dancing shadows on the wooden walls lined with animal pelts and hunting gear. Elias laid Clara on a thick wool blanket near the fire and began stripping off her frozen outer layers, revealing the frost-bitten skin beneath. His eyes softened as he worked quickly, warming cloths in the flames and pressing them gently to her face and hands. "Stay close, kids," he said, raking a hand through his tangled hair. "She needs rest." Samuel nodded but couldn't keep his eyes off the man who had just appeared out of the storm like some kind of guardian. Hours passed. The storm raged outside, but inside the cabin, a fragile peace took hold. Clara's breathing grew steadier, the color returning faintly to her cheeks. Elias sat back against the wall, watching the fire. "What happened to your family?" Samuel glanced at Ruth, then spoke softly. "Mama said Papa drowned last spring. The flood took him away." Elias nodded slowly, the shadows crossing his face. "I know the river's dangers all too well." Ruth whimpered quietly, clutching a rag doll. Elias reached over, pulling the doll from her small hands. "Here," he said, handing her a carved wooden bear from a shelf. "This will keep you safe." Clara's eyes fluttered open, meeting Elias's gaze. There was gratitude there, but also uncertainty. The mountain was unforgiving, but for the Mitchell family, the mountain man's cabin was now a place of hope, a new beginning, forged by kindness and courage. Outside, the storm began to ease, revealing a sky painted with stars. Days passed in the mountain cabin, each one a quiet battle against the harsh wilderness. Clara's strength slowly returned, but the weight of loss and uncertainty lingered in her eyes. Elias kept a steady hand, guiding her and the children through the fragile early days. Samuel and Ruth, once frightened and fragile, began to find a strange comfort in their new surroundings. Elias taught them how to read the signs of the forest, the tracks of deer, the call of distant birds, and the whisper of the wind through the pines. One morning, Samuel stood outside, eyes scanning the horizon, as Elias showed him how to use a simple hunting bow. "Steady now," Elias said. "The mountain doesn't forgive mistakes, but it rewards patience." Samuel nodded, pulling back the bowstring carefully. The arrow flew true, striking a squirrel in the nearby thicket. "Good," Elias said with a rare smile. "You're learning." Meanwhile, Clara helped Ruth gather wild herbs, her hands shaking but steady. "These will help soothe your cough," she explained softly, crushing leaves into a small poultice. As the days grew longer, the Mitchell family settled into a rough routine. Elias's rugged kindness became a steady anchor for them all, but the mountain held dangers beyond the cold. One afternoon, dark clouds gathered fast, and a sudden storm rolled in from the west. "We need to secure the cabin," Elias said sharply, his eyes narrowing. The mountain's moods change quick. Clara, still weak but determined, helped shutter the windows. Samuel and Ruth gathered firewood, working quickly under Elias's watchful gaze. That night, the wind screamed like a banshee, rattling the cabin walls. The fire flickered low, and Elias kept a rifle close, listening for any sign of wolves or worse. Clara sat near the fire, holding Ruth close. "Do you think we'll be safe here?" she whispered. Elias looked at her, the hard lines of his face softening. "As safe as anywhere. Out here, you learn to trust the mountain and those around you." Through the storm, a fragile hope took root. The mountain had tested them, but it had also begun to heal. The storm had passed, leaving the forest fresh and glistening under a crisp winter sun, but the mountain held its secrets, and not all of them were friendly. One morning, as Elias, Samuel, and Ruth ventured down the trail to gather supplies, they noticed signs of other travelers' bootprints and broken branches, hurried and careless. Elias's eyes darkened. Not all who roam the mountain come with good intentions. Back at the cabin, Clara was preparing a stew from dried venison and root vegetables. She hummed softly, a small comfort amid the uncertainty. Her recovery was steady, but the weight of survival pressed heavy on her. Suddenly, Samuel burst in. "Mama," Elias, "there are men down by the creek. They look rough, like bandits." Elias's hand went immediately to the rifle by the door. "We need to be ready. The mountain's not just cold. It can be cruel." That night, they set traps around the cabin, placing sharp stakes hidden beneath the snow. The children learned to be silent, shadows moving through the forest like ghosts. The next evening, the intruders came, 3 grizzled men, hungry and desperate, eyes wild with fear and greed. They prowled near the cabin, looking for supplies or trouble. Elias stood watch by the fire, rifle steady. The men's approach was slow, cautious. "Leave now," Elias called out, his voice low but firm. "This land isn't safe for thieves." A tense standoff followed, but Elias's calm confidence held. The bandits, sensing they were outmatched, withdrew into the night with a bitter curse. Clara exhaled deeply, relief flooding her face. "That was close," she said. Elias nodded, eyes scanning the dark tree line. "Out here, you learn quick trust is earned, but you have to be ready to defend what matters." The children, once scared and uncertain, now stood taller, eyes sharp with newfound strength. The mountain was no longer just a place of hardship. It was their home, a wild, unpredictable place where survival meant courage and family. Winter began to ease, and the mountain's grip softened under the early hints of spring. Clara, Samuel, and Ruth had grown stronger, not just in body, but in spirit. The mountain man, Elias Thorne, had become their protector, teacher, and friend. Inside the cabin, the fire crackled warmly as Clara tended to a small garden patch by the window, her hands steady and sure. Samuel practiced with his bow outside, eyes bright with determination, while Ruth played quietly with the carved wooden bear Elias had given her. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the peaks, Elias and Clara sat on the porch, wrapped in furs, watching the sky shift through gold and purple. "You've done more than save us," Clara said quietly. "You gave us a chance." Elias looked out over the valley, the land he had always called home. "It wasn't just me. You're strong. You faced the mountain and you're still standing." Samuel came up, a quiver of arrows slung over his shoulder. Papa would be proud. Clara smiled, tears in her eyes. I think he already is. The mountain had been a harsh, unforgiving place, a wilderness that tested every fiber of their being, but it had also been the place where hope was born, where a broken family found healing and strength. Together, they had built something new, a life shaped by resilience, love, and the wild beauty of the land around them. And as the stars appeared above the towering pines, the mountain whispered its ancient promise: survival, yes, but also rebirth. The future was theirs to forge.